You're listening to the Digital Revolution with Jim Kunkel, and today we're cutting through the noise. For years, AI's lived in the land of promise, bold claims, flashy demos, and endless talk about potential. But in 2026, the conversation has shifted. Leaders aren't asking what AI could do someday, they're asking a far more important question. What can AI deliver right now, and how do we measure it? And that's why today's episode matters. We're joined by Keith Metcalf, president of Acorn, a company that has built its reputation not on hype, but on outcomes, real ones, the kind you can quantify, defend, and scale. Acorn sits at the intersection of data, workflow, and operational reality, and Keith brings a perspective that every executive, every technician, and every digital transformation leader needs to hear. In this conversation, we dig into the shift from AI experimentation to AI execution. We explore how organizations move from pilots to production, from dashboards to decisions, from AI features to AI that actually changes the business. And most importantly, we talk about the metrics that matter: productivity, cycle time, compliance, technician enablement, and how Acorn helps companies provide ROI with clarity and confidence. If you're tired of AI theater and ready for AI that works, this episode's for you. Let's get into it. Keith, welcome.
Hey, how you doing, Jim?
I'm doing great, and I greatly appreciate you joining me here on The Revolution. For those who might not know who you are and Acorn, could you provide a background about yourself and also, too, about Acorn?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, Acorn started about 11 years ago, and I came on about 3 years ago to the organization. And it really started in the world of learning, like really complex, compliance required learning, getting through those learnings to prove to some auditory body that we had covered off what we need to in order to make sure we're doing something safely. That's largely where it came from. During the journey, our founder, Blake, he actually came to the conclusion that learning by itself, just completions, wasn't really changing behavior. And we sort of stumbled upon this finding. And the story is quite funny. Blake, he's in a town where he was walking through, and we'd do a lot of government work. And he had a lot of employees who are working for those agencies saying, hey, I use your software. And he's like, well, what do you like it? And he'd say, no, we don't like it. Like we're using this LMS and we hate taking those courses. And he really dug into why. And he started to learn that there was a fascinating thing going on where people were doing what was required, but not actually onboarding. And conceptually, we see it all the time, Jim, where people learn something, but they don't deploy the learning. And then it doesn't become behavioral. And he really started attacking that. I came on 3 years ago to help him with that and really sort of get the message out. So largely Acorn's been trying to get the message out that there's a better way to think about learning and behavioral change than just taking courses and getting completions.
Yeah, we've really seen out there a shift from the hype related to AI to getting into more of the accountability related to AI.
Yeah.
And especially in a lot of the different industries out there. When we look at anything from asset heavy sectors, they're demanding more now proof and not promises anymore. So
Yeah.
let me ask you about Acorn's philosophy. From doing research on Acorn, I see that your philosophy is that AI must produce quantifiable business value. What does that mean?
Yeah. No, good question. I'll get to that. And I'll sort of tie in my background a little bit. I've been in tech for 30 years. Sort of a weird thing to say now, but I remember the first dot-com boom, right? Like all these incredible promises. And ultimately, a lot of those promises came true, but the cycle of which the expectations were was ahead of itself, right? And we saw that adjust. And I think we're seeing something very similar. It reminds me of walking around with 9800 baud rate modems and talking to businesses saying, hey, this is going to make a difference in your world. And them going, I don't get it, right? I think AI is sort of going through a very similar cycle where the promises of what it could do for people are incredible. And it is doing some incredible things for people, but the expectations aren't aligned to what's actually occurring internally. And that's why we commissioned this report that we do annually. And we really focused it this year because we're so focused on learning and how it links to performance and behavior. we really honed the report this year and the survey in on that topic area. So I think that's how we ended up on the podcast here today.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk a little bit about the Acorn, the platform, and also the tech and the value. You did provide some background about AI-driven solutions that come from Acorn. How does the platform, how do you integrate data, the workflows out there, and then bubble that up into decision support?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, and what you'll see in the report, is that many organizations have tried something to define what jobs actually are. So, simply put, Jim, like in your role, what are the 4 to 5 things you need to be good at? And what does good to great look like? Now, in the learning industry, we've wrapped a whole bunch of things around that. We've wrapped the idea of competencies and skills and proficiencies, but rolling that out to the business so a leader and a learner can have a conversation regularly using that nomenclature has been really, really hard for people.
Mm.
So the platform we've worked on is how do we take what traditionally is done in heavy consulting, right? You'd have a consultant come in, meet with hundreds of managers and leaders, try and create some sort of matrix or skills or competencies kind of model that you could map roles to, and then get them to leaders and learners. Now, the neat thing is AI has sort of entered our world in what we are already working on that and made that much more achievable without the consulting hours. But we're still dealing with a tremendous amount of behavioral change in individuals where we're trying to get towards how do we actually get them to talk to each other in a language which reinforces the learning and behavioral change that we're going for. So much of our platform is all centered around that. Historically, we've done LMS and we do it well. We believe that learning and content has a place, but just like if you were to be, my 15-year-old taking a driving test right now, if he takes that exam, he's not ready to drive a car. He still needs to practice and implement the behavior. That's the capabilities part of the product that we work on quite a bit.
Yeah, and on the benefits, on the value side of it, what I really see when it comes to real life type of examples, the first comes into mind is a reduction in operational friction. I think that is important to be able to deal with that on the operation side, but also faster decision cycles, and also an improvement for compliance, documentation, and then ultimately, I think, enhance technical or technician productivity when you're looking at the users out there as well. Are there any other examples of measurable outcomes and value that I might have missed on that?
No, it's a good summary. I would say it's not necessarily different than what you said, but I think one of the things as a technology company we sort of look at all the time is how do we take technology and software and enable a more real conversation? So I think software companies historically have been really good at marketing concepts. Conceptually, here's something you could do. And you did a great summary where we sort of focus on outcomes at the beginning at Acorn. The simplest outcome that we try to drive towards is an interface for a leader and a learner to talk regularly about their job and what good to great looks like, and then to provide resources to actually improve and change that behavior. Now, the interesting thing is we're humans and we don't change behavior easily, right? And taking a course isn't necessarily going to do that. In regulated and safety required environments, this is one of the biggest struggles of the organizations we talk to, right? They say, hey, we did a safety training course, yet look at the number of violations, look at the number of days saved, look at that. It doesn't seem to be making a dent in it. And that's where we need this direct mentoring, direct conversation where people are demonstrating the behaviors we want to see and then the ones we don't want to see. And then how do you link that to organizational objectives where you can say, hey, we did some training, we did some learning. The leaders were talking about where they saw people doing it or not, and it changed the metrics in the business somehow. That's what we're really honed in on. And I think AI is just right now, it's like a brand new tool in everybody's toolbox. So it's really accentuating the importance of getting this right.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about the AI maturity curve,
Mhm.
especially specifically where companies are collectively right now. Earlier, when I opened up the podcast, I talked about companies want to move away from the experiments into execution and deliverables and things like that. What, in your opinion, why are most companies, the majority of companies, why are they still stuck in that AI experimentation mode?
Yeah, and the report that we did, we actually commissioned this one. We commission it every year. It's not our customers. It's a general market report over like 1,200 people with various organization sizes, sort of from 1,000 to 10,000. And we broke that question into three things that we wanted to understand from the community. One, the concept of broken development plan promises. Like we saw 58% of organizations report their development plans are either somewhat effective or not. So they've said to employees, we're going to help you develop. The biggest challenges from the survey we saw, Jim, were that one, the development plans weren't specific to their role. Two, they weren't consistent. Three, they weren't actually regular communications. And they didn't know what good to great looks like. So that's the first chapter. And there are a ton of like stats to sort of back up this concept that we've broken this promise of development plans with employees. And the other big one in that finding of that chapter is that if you say to somebody, we're going to give you development plans, training to get better, and then we're going to talk about it, but there's no tie into their career trajectory, that behavior doesn't get cemented. So that's the first chapter. Then we go into AI adoption without infrastructure. So that's the next chapter. And that one's really about people rolling out a tool. And that's what it is. It's a very powerful tool to employees. And if they haven't perfected the development plan piece, that new tool doesn't have a place to be relevant in the role. And then the last chapter is this concept of AI capability assessment voids. So there's no assessment tool that allows people to say, hey, AI is working well or not. So when you get to why are people sort of promising outcomes with AI, you can really see it at the executive level, a huge divergence between what executives are thinking the organization feels around this new tool, and a massive divergence as you go to the manager and individual contributor level.
Interesting. So another question I have for you is why is there still a large gap between the digital ambition and then the digital execution?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at organizational structure to really peel that one apart. I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure and acknowledgement, just like I mentioned in my history with the .com revolution, right? It was real, and we saw the full effect of that over decades, really. When it happened, there were a lot of people stymied on, like, what is going on? What does the future look like? And if you really simply tear it back and you look at a company, we've been built on a paradigm in most companies over a couple decades at least, maybe since that last revolution, where people look to their leaders to teach them what they need to know. And most of those leaders have come up through the ranks in some way, having done it for a long time with a great deal of authority and confidence built on that experience. When you throw a new tool in for those leaders who are at the same level as the people on their team, I think it pushes much more to maybe your earlier podcast days around purpose and leadership. You know, I was intrigued about your history on that because I think leaders are being challenged, and we see it in the survey results, to lead humbly with curiosity, and they don't have that authority that they once had, and it's changing fast.
Yeah, it is definitely changing fast. So let's segue into how Acorn, how you help companies move from those pilots, from those ideas, those dreams into full production.
Yeah, great question. I like to keep it really simple with companies. We have like a 5-scale evolution kind of concept. I think what's interesting with companies is if we walk in and we say, we're going to give you a development plan for every employee, and your leaders and learners are going to talk a language they've never talked before, and it's going to be fantastic. Companies are ecosystems when you talk about these kind of topics. There may be some departments who are already trying to do that. Acorn's not the only tool in the world, right? In fact, the irony is we find one of the biggest challenges for companies is they have 4 or 5 tools trying to do this. And oftentimes the golden spreadsheet's involved somehow, right? Where somebody's trying to talk to somebody and capture their job and the conversations. So we're not the only tool, but I think one of the interesting things out there is that you'll have a department that has leadership that's already pushing down this path. We can see that. And then you'll have another department that is not. So you almost have to approach an organization like a group that has different groups within it, and you have to evaluate some levels of maturity. So in our maturity model, what we talk about is the first thing, and I think you work in regulated industry, there's just a thing where you have to train people about safety. Like for whatever industry you're in, that is a requirement. You can't sort of get ethereal about it and say, let's talk about your development and your career path if you're not actually safe. So there is that sort of, some departments need to get there first. And what we would do is we would get them through the learning side of that journey. But once that learning side sort of becomes in place, if you want to start moving up towards this concept of capability development and behavior change, you have to start articling the job and the learning towards the job in a way that the learner can actually say, hey, I understand how learning this will make me better if I change the behavior and implement the learnings. So that would just crawl your way up that scale.
Yeah. Recently, there has been so much in the news about downsizing and adjustments with companies. And a lot of people have been throwing out there, oh, AI is taking away the jobs. And when you really read into the depth of everything, we're really not seeing what everyone is so fearful out there or using as an excuse out there. So let's talk about the human side. AI is a force multiplier for workers. And in your experience and what you're seeing out there right now, why is AI not replacing humans and why is it amplifying those workers out there?
Yeah, in the report, we called this the AI capability assessment void. So if thinking back to like the rest of the conversation and referring to it, if you don't have jobs articled in like some way that people can understand, and by the way, skills is really hard. Like the report came back and said some jobs and most jobs on average have between 11 and 20 skills. So just if you take technology and apply it at the interaction level, Jim, if I'm sitting with you and I'm every 3 months saying, okay, let's talk about skill number 20, now 19, that's not a human way of interacting. So we've done that down into what we would call more skills groupings, like capabilities. So it's 4 to 5 things. That's what people can consume. They can't consume much more. Then you need to have some very common definition of what good to great looks like in that discussion. Once you get there, then you can start evaluating a person's development in their role. AI, what we're seeing some companies do with our platform now is say, it's fine to say, as a podcaster, you should use AI more, Jim. Okay, well, if that's what your leader's guidance is, what do you do with it? What does success look like? What we like now is that people are taking roles and saying, okay, I want to actually say, here's what good to great looks like for use of AI in your role. And that's where the void goes away. Now, when you don't do that, the data is very clear. We had 78% of executives saying AI competency expectations are clearly communicated. If you go down to the manager level, that halves. And when you get to the individual contributors, it's 19%. So if you throw a powerful tool at somebody and begin with not having a clear way of talking about a person's development, how do they have any hope of saying that a person's getting better with that tool in their role?
Very good point. Very good point. So when it comes to Acorn, how do you design tools that fit real world work and not, idolize workflows?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in what you're thinking on workflow. So why don't we start there? Because I have an answer to the first part of your question. But what are you seeing when you say workflows? Because we hear different things on that.
Yeah. So when I think of workflows, is companies will have legacy types of processes and procedures.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're looking to do, and I encounter this even with my current employer, where they're looking to try to, let's say, bake in the AI, but they really don't have a full grasp or understanding of the current workflows. They've existed for time. They work, obviously they work, but are they the right workflows? And then how can AI be leveraged in there to, again, complement the human part of it, to amplify it, but also to maybe take it to a new next level?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, okay, so that's a big question. I think if I were to make it really simple, without obviously taking you through the whole product and a demo, all that kind of stuff, right? I would say this. I would say foundationally, if your organization could tell you, Jim, here's your 4 to 5 things in your role you need to be good at. One of them is AI. And we've given thought to what that looks like. And then if you do it and demonstrate that behavior, here's what good to great looks like. That will get your attention. That will get your attention much more than a leader who doesn't know what to do with AI because it's so new, saying to you, Jim, do more with AI, right? And I think it's fundamental, Jim. Like what we see is without that fundamental focus, it really is just up in the air on who's doing well or who's not with AI. It's sort of like I don't know. I actually don't understand how organizations are even making these decisions. And then how do you capture that conversation? So first off, if you don't article the jobs in a competency manner and you don't say to people how they're developing in those, how are they determining whether people are using AI well? But even more worrisome, Jim, I think, is that how are they making decisions on redundancies? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't think a lot of organizations do. And again, in the survey, that's very clear for us is that they don't. If they don't have that fundamental tie of AI to role and then expectations within it, you don't have any data to tell you whether or not people are being effective with it or whether you need more or less people. We do see some companies doing that, and clearly they're ahead. There's just no question.
Yeah, you really kind of set up my next thought process, and our conversation is related to measuring success. We talk about in business about key performance indicators, KPIs, and those are really important to not only show the health of a business or an organization, but also to measuring what's success. What's it like you said, you define it, here's what good, here's what better looks like, and how do you measure against that? What success look like? When it comes to Acorn, what are some of the KPIs that actually really matter related to AI?
I think the KPIs fit very well into development plans and skills and competencies. And what we've done recently, we're sort of pushing organizations around on this one. From the report, it was really clear, like 82% of executives are excited about AI as a topic. But when you get into the individual contributors, like 28% of them are scared or disillusioned, and 54% of them are just like, I'm out. Like, so if you're in that state, and then you throw a KPI or a metric in on it, like you lose people. In fact, it's fascinating because this is where we have focused on this link between performance and learning, right? Because as soon as you start throwing KPIs in, people are thinking about their jobs, they're thinking about pay, they're thinking about their mortgage, their kids' schooling, tuition. Like, so when you have an honest development conversation and you throw a KPI in the mix without any context, there's a danger that that conversation is not going to result in any development. And the exciting part about if you do article development plans and job, 4 to 5 things in their job that they need to be good to great at, and then you attach a KPI, what it does is it forces the leader to have to be a lot more thoughtful about what they're actually measuring in regards to somebody's development. So it sort of breaks that chain of distrust.
Mm. So let's talk about the future now. Based on your professional background, your experience, and also the experience of Acorn, what's the future? Where's AI taking us?
Yeah. I mean, I'm very excited about it personally. I think back to those 98 hit 100 baud rate modem days and the EON and all that kind of stuff. Like one of the most beautiful things about that time, and I entered software in my early 20s. I was really fortunate to, and everybody was equal. Like we all came from diverse backgrounds and nobody had experience because it was all new, right? And I think we're sort of in a similar time now where AI is creating possibilities that we've never seen before at the job level. It is for individual contributors who are curious, who aren't scared of making mistakes and love playing. Like that's what we did. We played, right? And when you played with the possibilities, your mind really opened to things. And I think we're sort of in that spot. One of the funny things on development plans that we see is even from a behavioral dynamic standpoint in teams, oftentimes companies have a brilliant jerk, right? Somebody who just like has that experience and knowledge to make somebody else not feel as knowledgeable. AI is sort of eliminating that now. You can sort of take those kind of behaviors and say, well, they're not okay, and maybe they're not that informed, and maybe we are a lot more close to equal than we ever were. And I think that's exciting. And I think for the companies and individuals that look at it that way, I can even tell you in our organization, we have a ton of people who are just playing, and the things they're doing with the results of that curiosity, almost like childlike curiosity, and um, just sort of the toying around. You see people like late here at night, or when I'm and coming in the next morning, and be like, "You wouldn't believe what I did," right? And I think that is where AI is bringing us back to. And frankly, I think it's inspiring. I think it's a fun time to be a part of. I tell a lot of the team members, "You're so lucky. I wish I was your age again," because this is going to be fun. And that's sort of what I think. The people who think that way with this next turn with AI shouldn't be scared. They should be excited. That's my belief.
Yeah, we are definitely in exciting times right now, and to be at the beginning of this is just absolutely amazing. So let's close out this episode. And Keith, I've got to ask you, what advice do you have for leaders who are really starting to take that AI journey with their companies?
Yeah, I think I'll do it in two respects because everybody's got their own company they're working in, their own mandate with their own team and individuals on it.
Hmm.
Um, have fun. Like, go try something. Find a problem. Don't find too big a problem because I've done that. I was like, I'm gonna be able to replace this role. Anybody who's actually played with AI, anybody who's created skills in Claude or like projects, or anything, they know that that's not where we are. We're not replacing a person. We're not saying to it, hey, we can, there we go, we have a new agent. In fact, Jim, we just actually on our support side changed our AI agent because it was impersonating a person. It was supposed to be like a person. And customers are getting confused. We said, no, this is a tool. That's what it is. And our customer deflection rate on and satisfaction just jumped like almost double because we weren't trying to make it a person. So I think if you look at it as a tool and you go after it hard and you find simple problems, start there, then you can start using other tools like, N8N and other tools to stitch things together. But just go find one problem and then you go hit any one of the different LLMs out there. Really, they're all different. We have opinions on which one's better and best right now. I did a post on LinkedIn on that recently, but have fun solving that problem and then the rest will start to unfold. So that would be my advice. And then apply that at your individual level from an Acorn perspective. Very simple. Every employee deserves a development plan day one, and they deserve regular conversations that are captured from an accountability standpoint with their leader. And if you aren't able to do that today, for everything we just talked about, your team will not advance at the rate that other organizations do.
Great advice. Great advice. And everyone, I will definitely put in the description a link to Acorn's site, but also to the survey and article that had been written that Keith was referencing. I'll make sure that I include that as well, so everyone can dig into it and take a look at that. And also, to please make sure you reach out to Keith and Acorn if you are, interested in furthering the discussion on these topics, and also to see exactly where you could go and where Acorn can help out. I appreciate everyone who is commenting on the episodes, but also sharing them and also promoting the podcast itself. Keith, anything that I might have missed that you want to cover, or any last messages for the listeners?
I have a quick question for you. I wanted to see how good AI was because this was so focused on it. What was your Myers-Briggs?
I'd have to pull it out. I apologize.
I have you as ENFJ, and I took a guess based on like everything that you've done there. So I thought that was sort of fun from a development standpoint. And then I was pushing it a little further, and I took a guess. It took a guess at your favorite song. So let's see, what did it come back with? Journey, Don't Stop Believing. Is it
That's
any good?
that's definitely in my top 10.
Is it? Okay, well, it's not
Yeah.
bad. All right. Well, I had that question. I wanted to see if it was right.
In fact, yesterday, my wife, one of her local girlfriends, came over, and she was going through, not my wife, but her girlfriend was going through some of her old stuff from when she was a teenager. She found a ticket to see Journey in concert for like $10.
No, really? How old is it? That's awesome, Jim. I love
Yeah.
it.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Talk to you later.